Good morning. My name's DavidMargolin, and this is another edition of the forecast contest where I'll sort of demonstrate my forecast process for those folks who are interested in learning more about medium range or subseasonal forecasting. All right, so today is October 29th. You can see the date up here, the mark date. And our target window is days 16 to 20, which is November 13th to November 17th. And we're forecasting in gas-weighted HDDs. This is the scoreboard here for today, and my forecast is input number one. I'm forecasting a mean of 89.5 HDDs, a 1 sigma spread of 21 HDDs, and my forecast formula is over here. And by the way, I just entered this information just to save a little bit of time. All right, so I'll walk you through my process here a little bit today, and again, I'll maybe demonstrate a couple of the research concepts we're working on. So I would say this is another interesting forecast day, although I guess you could say that almost any day. A couple of the interesting takeaways I think going on today. So first of all, especially for folks who are forecasting day to day, you probably noticed that the forecast in the shorter range has shifted quite a bit colder, thanks to our friends here at Maxar. I can show you the 1 to 5, 6, 10, 11 to 15, and I'll just pull up the JFS ensemble, which is somewhat similar to the other data here. And we can look at the 1 to 5 temperature anomalies. There's the United States, a lot of cold, with the exception of the East Coast. 6 to 10, a little bit eastward shift, a lot of cold across much of the country. Demand areas in 11 to 15, kind of similar themes, but even colder. So the short range, 1 to 5, 6 to 11 to 15, certainly HDDs are above the 10 and 30 year. Significantly so, in many cases, 10 or 20 HDDs for each of those 1 to 5 or 5-day blocks. And the forecasts have shifted colder over the last several days. So that's an observation and potentially an important data point for our 16 to 20-day forecast. Let me switch screens here. In terms of my forecast formula today, the major, or I guess the noteworthy adjustments is really that I continue to shift more weighting to kind of the 30-year normal and less weighting to the 10-year normal and the trend. Again, that's a continuation of something I've done the last few weeks, and it's in response to my view that, at least in the United States, the climate shift has had a more significant impact in the summer than in the winter. The other adjustment I made this period is to put a 5% weighting on the CFS. You can see that here. Previously, I had 0%. The reason I did this is not so much recent performance, which hasn't, I don't think has changed significantly. It's the belief, the view, based on experience and nothing more, that as we get into winter, that the CFS should have some weighting in my formula, just based on previous experience. So it's more of a subjective / experiential view, but I feel uncomfortable putting 0% weight in for the winter. That being said, I would be surprised if the weighting ever gets above 10 or 15, unless there's some change to the model or just some surprise performance during the next month or so. So I expect to be, between the 5 and 15. For the EC, I didn't change the weighting scheme. I do want to bring up my weighting continues to be 30%. I do want to make a point about the EC. I make it down in my strategy statement here, but I'll show it through the skill metrics. So once again, I'm going to go to the last verification we have, which is, here we go. So the last two verifications we have are for mark dates 10/8 and then the one before this, which was 10/1. And what you can see here, and I'll sort this by performance, the EC is near the bottom, bad performance, or near the bottom in terms of skill for the week of 10/8. And if we go to the week of 10/1 and sort this, it's also near the bottom. So this was another period where the pattern shifted. Certainly got a lot colder, a lot less warm. The verifications were pretty close to the 30-year normal, plus or minus, and the EC was much warmer in terms of HDDs. So I think this is worth pointing out. We've talked about how, again, the EC has had, in my opinion, based on what I've seen, some real struggles in terms of predicting pattern changes, at least at this lead window, 16 to 20, and it looks like that continues. So something certainly worth keeping in mind. That again, that the EC may not be a good indicator here for predicting, getting out of the cold pattern to a warm pattern, or vice versa. All right, last point. So I'm going to go back to forecast here. Last point I want to bring up, just in terms of this forecast, is the other thing I did look at is so I've mentioned we're working on some internal MJO tools. And so what you're looking at right now is the EPO change, which is effectively the region over Alaska. It's EPO change. It's a function of MJO phase and amplitude. The lag is the day 16 to 20, so it's period we're looking at. And it's looking at a seasonal window near where we're at today, so October 29th. The points represent changes in the EPO from the 1 to 5 to the 16 to 20 day. So where you see blues and purples, and that suggests a negative change in the EPO, and where you see the pinks and the reds, that suggests more of a positive change in the EPO. And just as a reference point, where are we at today? We're kind of, this is the last data point I have as of yesterday, but you could see we're kind of just near the circle's edge here in phase 3, not far from phase 2. And so somewhere around here, kind of in this neutral zone. So where you see the white is kind of the neutral zone. And this is, I think, symbolic of, I think, overall my view of the MJO here today in the tropical forcing. I just don't see a clear signal or signal that's enough to shift from my distribution. This data point is obviously kind of mixed. And then I've also looked at some of Professor Roundy's data points, and that kind of shows a shift maybe from cool to warm, at least briefly. And then some of the stuff from Caitlin that I've talked about from the last few weeks also, in my opinion, doesn't paint a real clear signal. So just a last look here at my formula for today. You can find it always on our spreadsheet that we provide through the forecast contest, and you can get complete transparency into sort of how I come up with my numbers here. But it worked out based on the formula here to, again, as we talked about earlier, about 89.5 in terms of HDDs, and 21 in terms of the spread. And you can also see that down here. So that's my forecast wrap up. Look forward to doing this again next week. Thank you.